Have you ever wondered why love, that sacred illusion of union, is the most efficient architect of human ruin? Why the same lips that whisper devotion later sculpt the gravestone of desire? It begins not with love, but with ego, an ancient creature dressed in affection, seeking not to give, but to consume. Beneath every confession lies hunger. Beneath every promise, possession. The ego does not fall in love, it hunts for mirrors. And when it finds them, it mistakes reflection for connection. That is the fatal flaw. He sees her not as she is, but as the projection of his own longing for control. She sees him not as he is, but as the echo of her craving to be chosen. Two ghosts circling a wound, calling it romance. They call it chemistry, but it is merely recognition of a shared shadow. The feminine senses his void, the masculine senses her hunger, and they orbit one another like predators in disguise. At first, she believes her tenderness is power. She softens, she bends, she translates silence into patience, rejection into misunderstanding. She mistakes self-abandonment for loyalty. Every unanswered message, every delayed glance she receives as a test of worth. The ego trembles beneath her ribs, whispering that if she gives more, she will be enough. She confuses endurance with love, as many do. But the universe does not reward those who beg, it devours them. He, meanwhile, mistakes her softness for submission. His ego swells in the warmth of her forgiveness. He believes he commands her devotion, yet it is only her own illusion binding her. He feeds on the smallness she performs, the way she dims herself to soothe his insecurity. He calls it love, but it is dependency. He calls it intimacy, but it is ownership. His desire is not for her essence, but for the control her affection grants him. But the dark feminine does not sleep forever. There comes a night when something within her fractures. The mirror cracks. She looks at him and no longer sees a god. She sees a man terrified of insignificance, trembling behind arrogance. She sees how he wields her love as a weapon to mask his own emptiness. And in that moment, she stops reaching. The silence that follows is not weakness. It is rebirth. He senses it before she speaks. The withdrawal, the distance, the absence of need. His ego scrambles to restore the old order, to resurrect the obedient reflection that once worshipped him. He provokes, he withholds, he tests her reactions, but she gives none. Her stillness becomes unbearable because it confronts him with the truth he has avoided. Without control, he is nothing. She, once desperate to be chosen, now realizes the power of choosing nothing, of choosing silence. In silence, she becomes untouchable. The energy he once drained now coils back into her, serpentine, sovereign. The same energy that once made her plead now sharpens her edges. She becomes Medusa, the one whose gaze petrifies delusion. He calls her cold, cruel, detached, but that is only because warmth no longer serves him. This is the moment Jung called confrontation with the shadow, when the ego faces its reflection and can no longer pretend. Love strips away the costume of morality, revealing the primitive engine beneath. The animus in her rises, clarity, logic, detachment, and the anima in him collapses, howling for nurture he no longer receives. She becomes what he fears most, a woman who no longer needs him. Now the stage turns dark. His voice trembles, demanding an explanation. But explanations are the opium of the weak. She gives him silence, and the silence devours him whole. His mind becomes a chamber of echoes, each one whispering the truth he refused to see. He was never loved. He was merely tolerated. Tonight, you must understand this. The ego's flaw in love is not that it wants too much, but that it cannot surrender. It clings, it demands, it bargains, it fears. It wants union without dissolution, control without vulnerability. And so it kills the very thing it seeks. Every attachment becomes a coffin. Every promise becomes a chain. You must learn to observe your own hunger without feeding it. Watch the craving for validation, the trembling need to be remembered. These are not signs of love. They are symptoms of the ego's decay. The moment you can stand in silence, unmoved, unapologetic, absent, is the moment you begin to ascend beyond human need. Tonight, sit in silence. Do not justify, do not explain. Let someone feel your absence like a funeral. Let the ghosts of your old self burn in that quiet. Power does not come from being desired. It comes from being unbothered, from walking away without leaving a trace. The woman who knows her worth does not chase. She watches the empire of illusions collapse, and she does not flinch. He dreams of her still, not the woman she was, but the silence she left behind. The silence that coils around his pride like smoke. It is not her absence that haunts him. It is the mirror she shattered. With at her reflection, his face dissolves. His name feels hollow in his own mouth. The god he played has died, and now he must meet the man buried beneath. This is how the ego breaks, not in a blaze, but in the quiet erosion of its illusions. Every love it loses becomes a small funeral for its false identity. He believed she betrayed him, but she only withdrew the fantasy he demanded. He did not love her soul. He loved the way her devotion disguised his weakness. When she vanished, she took the illusion with her. What remains is raw, unadorned humanity, stripped of applause. The dark feminine is the midwife of death, not of flesh but of delusion. She arrives not with tenderness but with fire. When she withholds affection, she is not being cruel, she is invoking transformation. For in rejection, truth is born. In absence, illusion starves. He feels her silence as punishment, but it is initiation. The soul must be humiliated before it can be free. She walks through the wreckage of what was, untouched by sentiment. Her gaze is clear, her breath slow, her heart unshaken. There is no revenge in her distance, only transcendence. She understands that the ego cannot be reasoned with, it must be starved. So she feeds it nothing, not attention, not memory, not explanation. Her restraint is her sword, her indifference the executioner's blade. He searches for closure, a final word, an ending to justify the pain. But closure is a human invention, a fantasy the ego clings to in order to avoid the void. She gives him none, because she has seen through it all, the performative apologies, the cyclical longing, the desperate promises to change. The ego promises eternity, but it cannot even survive silence. The man who once commanded her emotions now stands before the ruins of his own making. He thought control was love. He thought dominance meant power. But power built on her submission was only ever a dream. The moment she withdrew, the empire fell. This is the law of polarity. What you control through fear, you lose through awakening. And now she no longer bleeds for him. Her tears have dried into armor. Her softness is gone, not lost, but transmuted. What once was devotion becomes discernment. What once was longing becomes lucidity. She walks now as one who has seen the machinery behind love's theater. The lights, the scripts, the rehearsed promises, all mechanisms of ego survival. This is what Jung warned. The anima and animus, when unconscious, do not unite, they enslave. The man projects his inner feminine onto a woman, demanding that she carry his soul. The woman projects her inner masculine onto a man, begging him to give her direction, meaning, completion. Neither sees the other. Both chase ghosts, and so they suffer. But when projection collapses, power returns. She reclaims the anima within her, the intuition she once surrendered for approval. He must face the animus within him, the discipline he once outsourced to control. In this confrontation, both are stripped to essence. If they endure it, they emerge sovereign. If they resist, they descend into obsession. Now look closer. This is not merely his story. It is yours. The one who still waits for closure, still stalks the digital ghosts of someone who has already forgotten your warmth. The one who still believes that love means being understood. You suffer because your ego cannot accept invisibility. But invisibility is the crucifixion that births power. To vanish without anger is to rise beyond control. You were not abandoned. You were initiated. Every rejection was a ritual in disguise, every heartbreak a teacher that tore away your dependence. The pain was never punishment, it was purification. The more you clung, the more it cut, until you had no choice but to release. That release was your ascension. Tonight, you must stop romanticizing your own suffering. Stop replaying the scenes where you begged, where you hoped, where you tried to prove worth. That version of you is gone. Let her rest. Do not resurrect her with memory. When you recall her desperation, observe it like a corpse under glass, detached, analytical, unflinching. You cannot heal by reviving what needed to die. Breathe. Let the silence fill you until you feel nothing. That nothing is not emptiness, it is space. The space where power gathers. The space where you become untouchable. From that stillness, you will no longer attract the wounded. You will summon the worthy. Remember this. The ego's death is not tragedy, it is liberation. The one who once begged for love must now command herself. She becomes the throne she once sought to sit beside. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes. There is a stillness that follows transformation, a silence so profound it feels like standing inside the ruins of one's former self. The echoes of old longing fade, and what remains is neither love nor hatred, but awareness. It is the cold awareness of one who has crossed through illusion and survey. Ved, the dark feminine, stands there in that hollow aftermath, unblinking. She has burned. She has watched the ashes of her tenderness scatter across the same ground where she once knelt. Now she kneels no more. He watches her from a distance, unable to name the terror that rises in his chest. It is not fear of her cruelty, but of her clarity. There is no weapon more devastating than a woman who sees. Once, he could twist her emotions like vines, feed on her guilt, seduce her back into the circle of his control. But how do you manipulate someone who no longer reacts? How do you seduce a storm that has learned indifference? The ego cannot bear invisibility. It thrives on reflection, adoration, resistance, validation. Her silence starves it. Each moment she does not respond is a mirror turned to black glass. He shouts into it, desperate for a sound. But there is none. His voice returns empty, swallowed by the void she became. This is the shadow of the anima, as Jung described, the feminine energy within the masculine that he cannot integrate, and so he projects it outward. When she withdraws, he feels that inner wound reopen. He confuses it with heartbreak, but it is deeper. It is the collapse of his self-concept. For years, he mistook her for his soul, and when she vanished, he mistook her silence for betrayal. Yet what truly betrayed him was his own blindness. He once sought her warmth as a cure for his inner coldness. Now he sees that no woman can heal what a man refuses to face. He must enter his own darkness as she did hers. He must look into the mirror of solitude and meet the weakling behind his pride. The boy who wanted a mother in every lover. The tyrant who feared being seen as small. Until he does, he will wander through women, repeating the same wound under new faces, calling it fate. Meanwhile, she evolves. The once bleeding voice inside her has turned to silence, and that silence becomes her crown. She no longer measures her worth by attention. She no longer mistakes intensity for intimacy. She no longer offers explanation to those who misunderstand her quiet. The feminine power does not prove, it reveals by withdrawal. The less she says, the more the world listens. When she enters a room, she carries the gravity of detachment. Men feel it like a temperature drop, though they cannot name it. It is not arrogance, it is presence stripped of need. The dark feminine does not chase love, she attracts through absence. She does not seduce with smiles, but with mystery, and mystery terrifies those who cannot control it. He tries again to reach her, small gestures, casual words, attempts to reopen what has already been sealed. But her heart has closed like a temple after dusk. She has become an altar no longer accessible to the uninitiated. To approach her now is to confront oneself. Her silence is no longer a defense, it is a mirror. Every man who faces her sees his reflection, distorted, exposed, unforgiving. Most look away. This is how the dark feminine teaches without speaking. She dismantles through stillness. Her rejection is revelation. She does not wound through cruelty, but through absence, because absence forces confrontation with the self. She knows that love, when rooted in ego, is parasitic, and so she withholds it until it becomes sacred again. You too must learn this art, to stand in your silence without apology, to let their confusion unravel them while you remain composed. When they ask what happened, do not explain. Explanation is nourishment for the weak. Let them invent their own stories, for they will reveal themselves through the lies they tell about you. You owe no clarity to those who exploited your chaos. Power, real power, is restraint. It is the calm refusal to react. It is walking away while they still believe they have control. It is the way your silence rearranges their mind, the way your absence becomes their teacher. You are no longer the girl who begs to be seen. You are the woman who watches empires crumble in quiet satisfaction. The ego in love always dies screaming because it believes that attention equals existence. Let it scream. Do not answer. In that disobedience, you reclaim your soul. And when you do, love transforms. It no longer seeks completion, it becomes creation. No longer a mirror, but a force. The dark feminine does not need to be loved. She is asterisk love in its most unforgiving form, the kind that births truth through destruction. So tonight, say nothing. Turn off the noise. Watch how quickly the world trembles when you withdraw your energy. You are not rejecting them. You are returning to yourself. You are the storm and the calm that follows. The woman who knows her worth does not argue. She vanishes. There is a sacred cruelty in evolution, the kind that does not announce itself with triumph, but with detachment. The woman who has crossed her own underworld no longer romanticizes transformation. She understands that growth is not light, it is Phi. Ray, not grace, but decay. The ego dies not once, but many times, each death leaving her sharper, colder, clearer. She carries no resentment for the past, only precision. The same softness that once bound her is now a weapon honed by silence. He will return as all ghosts do, drawn not by love but by the gravitational pull of what he cannot possess. His memory of her is incomplete, distorted by the illusion that she still belongs to his story. But she has stepped outside of narrative. She is no longer a character in his myth. She has become the myth itself. To look at her now is to confront the cost of every illusion he ever sold. He approaches carefully, speaking in the language of remorse. The words sound different now, empty, metallic, rehearsed. They are the currency of those who believe time erases consequence. He wants to be forgiven not because he has changed, but because guilt is uncomfortable. Yet she listens with the same stillness as before. Her silence is no longer emotional. It is surgical. It dissects his words as one might study the anatomy of a lie. He mistakes her calm for indifference, but it is not indifference, it is knowing. She sees him not as a man, but as an archetype, the eternal boy, the Narcissus drowning in his own reflection, the wounded animus refusing to mature. He believes he loves her, but he only seeks to re-enter the mirror where he once felt powerful. She denies him entry, not through cruelty, but through evolution. To return to him would be to regress, to betray the self she buried to become sovereign. This is the cruelty of awakening. Once you see the mechanism, you can never again believe in the illusion. The old tenderness becomes impossible. Compassion remains, but it is detached, impersonal. She no longer saves men from themselves. She allows them to drown if they must. The dark feminine is not the rescuer. She is the reckoning. Through her absence, he meets his truth. Through her silence, he faces his own abyss. She walks alone now, but it is not loneliness. It is sovereignty. Solitude to her is no longer exile, it is kingdom. She has ceased to crave company that drains her, ceased to crave validation that costs her peace. What she once called connection, she now recognizes as dependency disguised as intimacy. Love, in its truest form, does not chain, it mirrors wholeness. Only those who have faced themselves can love without consumption. You too must learn this. To see how the ego disguises attachment as affection. To see how you begged not for love, but for recognition. You wanted someone to witness your worth because you could not yet bear to witness it yourself. That was the wound, the absence of self-regard that made you kneel before those who mistook your devotion for weakness. But kneeling ends now. Stand in the cold clarity of knowing. You owe no one softness. The feminine is not only nurturing, it is also the destroyer, the dark womb that ends what no longer deserves to exist. Destruction is not hatred, it is purification. When you withhold love from those who drain it, you are not cruel. You are cleansing the sacred space of your energy. The world will call you detached, difficult, unapproachable. Let it. The world fears the woman who cannot be manipulated through guilt. They will say you have hardened when in truth you have simply remembered yourself. To be unyielding is not a sin, it is survival. Those who call you cold have only known warmth they could exploit. And so she becomes legend, not because she seeks attention but because she no longer does. Her absence becomes magnetic, her silence a hymn. She is not above desire, she has mastered it. She does not reject connection, but she demands consciousness. To stand beside her, one must first stand within themselves. Anything less dissolves in her presence. He will remember her for the rest of his life, not as a woman, but as an event. The day his illusions died, the moment he realized that love without awareness is self-destruction. He will chase reflections of her in others, but never find her essence again, for it cannot be replicated by those who still seek permission to exist. Now look inward, do you see it? The part of you that still wants to be chosen, the whisper that still begs to be understood. Cut it out, let it bleed. That voice is the remnant of an old self, the servant of a false god called validation. You are not meant to be chosen, you are meant to choose. You are not meant to be understood. You are meant to be felt like a force that cannot be named. Tonight, bury your softness beneath your silence. Let your detachment become sacred. When they reach for your energy, give them nothing. Not anger, not affection, not explanation. Only absence. Absence that humbles. Absence that heals through exposure. Absence that becomes the sermon of your rebirth. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes. In the quiet aftermath of awakening, the air thickens with revelation. There is no celebration, only stillness. The dark feminine walks through a world that feels smaller now, stripped of illusion, emptied of noise. She has seen behind the curtain, seen how the human heart bargains for crumbs and calls it devotion. She no longer hungers for that theater. The stage of love where masks play against masks bores her. She seeks only truth, and truth is rarely kind. The ego, still clinging to memory, tries to resurrect the past. It whispers of comfort, of the warmth of belonging. But she knows that comfort is the opiate of the unawakened. It dulls awareness, makes one small, obedient safe. Safety is for the unfinished. She has become something else entirely, unreachable, crystalline, sovereign. What once terrified her, abandonment, isolation, rejection, has become her throne. The man who once claimed her cannot comprehend this evolution. He sees her again, perhaps in passing, and does not recognize what stands before him. Her eyes are the same, yet something in them has shifted. They no longer seek, they judge. They no longer plead, they discern. He feels it, though he cannot name it. The quiet authority of a woman who no longer fears loss. That absence of fear radiates like a weapon, slicing through his posturing. He remembers how she used to look at him, with hope, with hunger, with faith. Now her gaze passes through him as though he were transparent. This indifference is the truest revenge, the kind that needs no performance, no proof. Indifference is divine. It reveals the imbalance of all that came before. He wanted control, but control requires engagement, and she has withdrawn even that. She does not resist him, she erases him through disinterest. The dark feminine does not scream, she does not plead, she watches, always watches. Her silence is observation refined into judgment. The masculine ego cannot survive that gaze, it collapses under exposure. The boy who sought a mother meets a mirror that refuses to soothe him. He calls her heartless, but he confuses clarity with cruelty. Her detachment is not vengeance, it is transcendence. To hate him would still be to care, and she no longer does. Jung wrote that what we repress controls us. She has faced her repression, her fear of being alone, her compulsion to nurture, her addiction to being needed. These shadows once drove her to chase, to explain, to fix. But she has reversed the polarity. The energy that once sought external validation now feeds inward, nourishing something ancient. The queen, the witch, the mother of shadows. These are not titles of affection, but of power. She belongs to no man, no narrative, no wound. Now she moves through the world differently. Every gesture measured, every word deliberate. She speaks less, but when she does, the air shifts. People listen, though they do not know why. They sense the weight of someone who has seen death, not physical but psychological. She has died to illusion, and thus nothing threatens her. The one who no longer fears loss becomes untouchable. You too must reach this stillness. Stop seeking closure. Closure is a lie sold to the desperate. The wound does not close, it transforms. The ache becomes awareness, the silence becomes sanctuary. You must let the ego die its slow, pathetic death without interference. It will beg for reaction. It will crave the old rituals of attention. Do not feed it. Each time you stay silent when you want to explain, you reclaim a piece of your soul. He will remember your silence longer than he ever remembered your words. Words fade. Silence lingers. It breeds introspection. Let him sit with it. Let him feel the consequence of your withdrawal as time stretches into regret. You owe him nothing, not even anger. The moment you stopped needing to be understood was the moment you ascended beyond him. Do not mistake this state for bitterness. Bitterness is attachment in disguise. This is something colder, cleaner. A form of grace only earned through ruin. The kind of grace that no longer asks, "Why me?" but instead whispers, "Of course." Everything that was taken was never yours to begin with. Everything that remained was forged to survive. Now she becomes the archetype of completion, the union of her own opposites. The anima and animus within her no longer war. Her intuition and logic have merged. Her softness and discipline coexist. She no longer seeks balance outside herself because she is the balance. That is the secret the world fears most, a woman who needs nothing. And in this sovereignty she is dangerous, not because she destroys but because she reveals. Her presence exposes the falsity of others. Men who once thrived on her emotional labor find themselves small beside her. Women who still perform their worth feel uneasy in her company. She does not compete, she simply is asterisk. And that beingness, silent, vast, self-contained, is unbearable to those still trapped in hunger. Tonight you must practice her stillness, not as performance but as awe. Remembrance, withdraw your energy from every place that drains it. Do not explain, do not announce, do not wait. Vanish softly like mist retreating before dawn. Let absence become your declaration. Those who deserve you will find you in stillness. Those who do not will drown in your silence. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes. There comes a point when transformation is no longer visible. It stops being aesthetic, stops being dramatic. It becomes quiet, nearly invisible, like a deep internal rearrangement. The dark feminine reaches this final stage, a realm beyond emotion, beyond longing, beyond even identity. The woman who once begged for love now moves like shadow and wind, her essence untouched by human games. She has crossed the border between need and knowing. He does not understand what she has become. To him, she is a riddle that no longer responds, a flame that gives no heat. He stands before her with the same tricks that once worked, confession, attention, guilt, and finds them useless. His voice strikes against her silence and falls dead. He begins to realize the truth too late. Power is not taken by force, it is surrendered through ignorance. The moment she stopped reacting, he ceased to exist. His ego decays in her absence. Every day without her acknowledgement feels like slow disintegration. He scrolls through old messages, old memories like relics of a lost religion. He once worshipped her light, now he drowns in the void she left. It is not heartbreak, it is ego death disguised as loss. And ego death is the closest thing a man can experience to true rebirth if he survives it. But she does not wait for his awakening. She has learned the lesson that many never do, that not everyone can follow. Evolution is a solitary act. The world applauds healing but not detachment, because detachment cannot be exploited. A woman who needs nothing cannot be sold back to herself. She becomes the one thing society fears, self-contained, unmarketable, whole. She is not cruel, she is simply clear. When she looks at him now, it is not with hatred but with understanding. She sees the wound beneath his arrogance, the boy within the man, the fear behind the control. But she also knows that empathy without boundaries is self-erasure. So she feels but does not stay. She understands but does not forgive. Forgiveness is irrelevant when there is no longer resentment. She has transcended even the moral economy of right and wrong. In her stillness, she has met the archetypes of herself: the siren who once seduced, the witch who once cursed, the queen who once ruled. Each was a face of her evolution, but now she wears no mask. The power she once performed has become quiet, internal, elemental. She no longer acts powerful, she simply is asterisk. And power, when it no longer needs to prove itself, becomes divine. The world reacts differently to her now. Men look but do not approach. They sense something impenetrable, something they cannot manipulate. Their charm dies on their tongues. Their confidence withers beneath her gaze. It is not that she is unkind, it is that she is unmoved. They can no longer find their reflection in her eyes, and that absence unnerves them. She does not belong to the narrative of longing anymore. Women sense it too. Some envy her distance, mistaking it for arrogance. Others recognize it and bow internally, understanding the cost of such detachment. For this peace was not born of privilege, it was born of loss, humiliation, surrender. She earned it through every time she was ignored, every time she begged, every time she gave until she was empty. Pain was the forge, now she is the blade. And what of love? It still exists for her, but it has changed form. It no longer arrives as craving or illusion. It flows as a quiet, constant force, without object, without need. It is not directed outward, but inward and upward. Love has become awareness itself. She sees everything as connected, but she no longer clings. The cords of attachment that once bound her heart have turned to threads of light, soft, strong, but untied. This is the essence of individuation, the union of opposites within. Jung knew this path was not for the faint-hearted. It demands the annihilation of the false self, the acceptance of solitude, the embrace of shadow. But once complete, there is no return. The woman who integrates her darkness becomes untouchable, not because she hides her pain, but because she has integrated it so completely that nothing external can wound her again. You listening now must remember this. Power is not found in conquering others, it is found in mastering reaction. The ego thrives on noise. Withdraw into silence and watch how the world reveals itself. Those who once fed on your chaos will fall away. Those who fear your stillness will name it cruelty. Let them. You are not here to be understood, you are here to become complete. When you stop needing closure, validation, or witness, you step beyond the realm of suffering. You enter sovereignty, the final frontier of the self. From that throne, you do not punish, you do not chase, you do not explain. You simply exist asterisk, and your existence itself is judgment. Let that be your final act. Not rage, not reconciliation, but disappearance. Not the vanishing of despair, but of transcendence. You leave not because you are wounded, but because you are finished. And in that silence, every illusion that once enslaved you will burn. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes.